Oliveira wasn't hell-bent on pressuring this fight. Instead, he started off kicking with Arman at range. He kicked out the trail leg on Arman's step-up body kick. Arman immediately shot a double from his ass, but Oliveira sprawled down hard on him and started threatening from the front headlock. Arman reached out to block the hip so Oliveira couldn't get the angle he wanted to sit into the guillotine. When Oliveira got up on his knees, Arman followed suit by raising his hips. Oliveira wants to walk around and hook over Arman's leg, but Arman kept rotating and using the arm to block it. When Arman steps his knee over Oliveira's leg, he thinks it's now safe to stand. But Oliveira just jumps guard once they're up. Arman rolls to his side and starts pushing on the knee to break the guard. Because Oliveira has an arm in and full guard, he can't really roll Arman over to finish from the mount. Having a butterfly with no arm in would let him rotate Arman over, but he committed to the arm in early, so it is what it is. Arman was able to get his hips out far enough to take choking pressure off, and eventually free his head. As soon as Oliveira felt Arman's head pop out, he broke his guard so he could step over to mount. Arman tried to push off and bridge and use his underhook to turn Oliveira over. But Oliveira first posts on his head, and then with his elbow to stop from getting turned over. He also starts locking his feet around Arman to attach himself to him. Eventually, Arman was able to get control on the head and arm before bridging to prevent Oliveira from posting with them. Oliveira couldn't post with his right arm but tried to bring his left across. Kicks his leg free of the grapevine. Pushes off with his right arm. Arman wasn't easy to get out from underneath. Oliveira gets a butterfly hook and uses it to elevate Arman. But Arman wraps underneath the other leg, which lets him control Oliveira's hips to pass the guard. This puts Oliveira on the defense now, so now he has to block the hip. But ultimately, he just settles back in guard where he started. From the guard, Oliveira looked for wrist control, but Arman turned the elbow over top of it. Oliveira brought his arm up to try to block, but Arman would change the trajectory of his elbow to cut through his defense. When Oliveira wrapped up the left arm with an overhook, Arman would just elbow on the right. When Oliveira wrapped up the right arm with an overhook, Arman would just elbow on the left. The elbows got much worse in the second round when Arman trapped his head against the fence. Against the fence, Arman can elevate the hips off the mat and stuff the head to keep Oliveira much more stationary. Arman could stay nice and tight, giving Oliveira no room to work any angles for arm bars and triangles. Overhook on the right arm again, elbow on the left. Wrist control didn't help either. Oliveira got a brief respite by tying up the left arm with both of his and hiding his head. But Arman reached his arm through for a Darce grip and used it to pry his arm free. When Oliveira had no grips, Arman could land even harder elbows. Eventually, at the end of the first round, Oliveira was able to find a way off his back. With double overhooks, he used the butterfly on one side to elevate and tried to trip out the other leg on the other side. Arman's hips were just too damn strong, so he didn't get swept. But Oliveira blocked with his butterfly and got his right leg out. Once he turned to his base, he could use the overhook to stand without getting his back taken. On the feet, Arman always attacks a lot off the lead side. He caught Oliveira with the step-up left body kick, which he also uses effectively to end his combinations. His jab was his most important strike though. He used it to pester Oliveira while he circled at range, and throw it after his combos to stop Oliveira from coming after him. The fact that Arman felt comfortable throwing an axe kick shows how little pressure Oliveira was putting on him. Oliveira relies on his high guard, so he's vulnerable to straight shots up the middle. Arman's jab also made it more difficult for Oliveira to find his range. He kept Oliveira guessing by mixing up his jab with dips and looping left hooks. After pawing with the left hook, he threw a sharp jab. He dipped down to feint takedowns, then came upstairs when Oliveira was shooting his hips back to defend. Here he used his active lead hand to get away from the fence. The constant level change threats from the dip froze up Oliveira and helped nullify his pressure. Arman plays the jab and the takedown off each other similarly to GSP. He keeps his lead arm outstretched to shorten the distance the jab needs to travel. Oliveira was able to slip inside and cross-counter the jab once, but he wasn't able to counter it enough to dissuade Arman from throwing it. He tried to counter with the right hook too when Arman came in with a combination, but despite Arman's vulnerabilities, Oliveira wasn't able to find anything to put him off his game. Where Oliveira had more consistent success was in the clinch. Here he's using his head post to pin Arman against the fence. He reaches down to block Arman's hips, then uses the space to land a knee to the body. Arman is bad about hanging on loosely and leaving space in the clinch. Oliveira punishes him for it with an elbow. Arman moves forward with a combination, but look how he's just reaching out for the clinch. He just gives Oliveira the inside position. So Oliveira whips an elbow around, then keeps it there to frame off. Arman level change feints again, then tries to throw an uppercut as Oliveira ducks down and gets his hips back. Oliveira wraps up a collar tie and catches Arman with a short right hook, then gets the head post. Arman is just walking forward with the underhook. Oliveira is able to use his head post with the overhook to create space for a knee. Then he frames Arman off to escape. Again, Arman tries to box into the clinch, but Oliveira just punches around him when he's reaching. Bad shots in open space were risky because Oliveira could grab the overhook and force him up into the clinch. What saved Arman is that he wasn't dependent on the clinch for his takedowns. In the second round, it was a reactive single that eventually led to the takedown. He could also keep up with Oliveira in the scrambles. And because of the success of his jab, he could set up takedowns with his striking too. Feinting the jab draws out the parry, Then he drops down to attack the legs. Oliveira generally has a narrow stance, making it easier for Arman to get his hands behind both of the legs. Oliveira tries briefly to pull Arman up, but he was standing too tall to get the overhook. He wraps around the head, essentially giving up on defending the takedown and looking for the guillotine instead. But there's no space to connect his hands here, so he reaches through, accepting another arm-in guillotine. He tries to trap the leg to prevent Arman from passing, but even if he did, there's little chance of him finishing the arm-in guillotine from half guard. Arman has great balance and flexibility on top, so he's able to pass anyways. The irony was that even though Arman got to the crucifix and took the back, he was never able to do any damage from these positions. Oliveira was able to stop him from ever securing back control. Blocking the back take. Arman gets a hook in, but Oliveira slumps Arman's weight over towards the fence, then lifts his elbow to throw the other hook off as he stands. And of course, he immediately wraps up the neck in transition. Arman wasn't ever close to getting choked out here like he was with the guillotine. But the more important lesson was that he didn't need to try to take good positions on Oliveira. He beat Oliveira up from guard in the first 2 rounds, so he should have just went back there rather than looking for the crucifix and back mount. Last thing, yes, the corpse defense is a legitimate way to take pressure off the darts choke.